here with Bradley the Buyer. This is Spoony Boomer, and we're going to learn something.
I'll preface this by saying that this is the only interview that I've ever had that for this project or any other, that I will answer everything with 100% accuracy. Absolute disclosure. Anything that you should choose to ask me, so that being said.
Well, do you have anything on your mind that you would like to get out besides your disclaimer? Anything you've been thinking about most recently?
No, I mean, what do you want to know?
How'd you start getting into music?
When I was, say maybe like 6 or 7 years old, my first real show that I went to was to see Pink Floyd, and it was like 1994. Would have been really young. And it was the Division Bell Tour, and it was the most impressive thing that I'd ever seen or been a part of. And I remember that for the rest of my life. And around that time, I started listening to all kinds of stuff. Mostly what I was brought up, raised with bands like The Doors and The Grateful Dead, Pink Floyd, Hendrix. You know, your typical kind of hippie stuff. And then I got more into like folk music. And I actually, when I started making music, it was more from that kind of perspective. You know, a lot of it was psychedelic, a lot of folk. I was hugely into Syd Barrett, the founder of Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
I listened to a lot of Bob Dylan and things like that. I got a little older. I started getting more into what people at the time were generically referring to as industrial music, but a lot of purists in that scene would tell you that it isn't. Like,
yeah, fuck purists.
Well, I tend to lean in that direction, but that's blasphemous to a lot of people. The stuff that I'm referring to, by the way,
I'm not a purist, but
I'm not either. I mean, I have no vendetta against mainstream music, and I want to say that, even though most people think that I do because of the music that I make. A lot of people find it to be really inaccessible, but then...
Well, a lot of mainstream music is inaccessible to intellectuals. I mean,
right. It is, absolutely. It's a shame that pop has become a dirty word, because at one point at least, I think there was intelligent pop music being made. It's just not anymore.
Michael Jackson.
You know, I mean, it's just... So when I say that, what I mean is that what I grew up listening to when I hit the teenager years, early adolescence to adolescence, were bands like Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson, and later on things like Aphex Twin, a little bit more of like the IDM kind of thing, and then through there I discovered bands like Square Pusher, Venetian Snare. Well, you know, you can't really say Square Pusher's a band; it's one guy. Square Pusher, Venetian Snares, Front 242, Skinny Puppy. I do listen to Ministry. A lot of people don't really care for them, but and then, you know, I had the background in a lot of people like that I knew and grew up with. My parents listening to classic rock, psychedelic rock, so I kind of went from there. And I listened to a lot of classical. I went to school for several years to study classical guitar and jazz guitar, so I picked up an interest in jazz while I was there. One of my earliest like written assignments, aside from music theory for jazz, was to transcribe. There's a solo by Miles Davis on the record So What, and one of the first real transcription assignments I had to do was to transcribe the trumpet solo that Davis plays the whole thing, and that was pretty useful. And so I started fucking around with jazz music, and I liked that a lot. Of course, I mean, when I first started to play guitar when I was a youngin', about 12, when I first really picked up a guitar and started playing, and I think that you have that thing with a lot of guys that they, you know, if they're not very good at talking to women, or they want to meet people or impress people, maybe that was the drive initially, although certainly today is not that, but they see right through me. No, I mean, you know, that was a part of it, and I'd be lying if I said that it wasn't. But, you know, when I first started playing, the records that I learned to play along with were things like the Sex Pistols and the Misfits, and a lot of really simple kind of...
Did you get into that a lot, playing over top of other music?
Yeah, I mean, that was how I learned. Yeah, I mean, the first record I ever really sat down and learned to play all the way through was Nevermind the Bollocks by the Sex Pistols, and I was probably about 12 years old, and I realized, wait a minute, this is not that difficult.
I mean, how's the process like that for you? Did you get all the sheet music out and like, I'm going to learn this technical way, you know?
Later on in life, yeah, I did, but I mean, at that point in time, I was just hearing it, and I would play it and listen to it and say, this note sounds like this, and I would fuck around with the guitar until I figured it out. The thing about stuff like that you have to keep in mind is that, you know, a lot of that is based on power chords, bare fifth kind of power chords, and that is really simple for a kid learning to play guitar. It's very much like you hear the root, which is the bass note in the chord, and it's not even really a chord, it's just usually the root note and then a fifth above that, which is the power chord figure. It's also called a bare fifth chord. And you hear that, and as long as you can hear the root of it, you know, you can figure it out. So I would just mess around with it until I got it and it sounded right, and that's kind of how I learned to do ear training and figure things out by ear. Which later on in school, when I actually studied music, like real music, not the Sex Pistols.
They pretty much agreed with you. That's what they tried to train you.
Well, that's a big part of it. That's not all of it. I mean, yeah, ear training was indispensable, and a lot of people have more problems with that than the theoretical end of it. What really gave me trouble was music theory, which is this whole other thing that it drove me up the fucking wall. People really don't understand how difficult it is to do something like that as a major. That I mean, musicians are viewed to be lazy, and I'll tell you that I've never been lazy. I've always been one of the hardest working people I know. I just don't get paid to do it. That's honest, upfront. I work my ass off. I just don't ever see any profit from it. That's why I'm so poor, and I don't really have any means of supporting myself, because I do spend all my time doing this kind of stuff. And I got a lot of shit growing up. You know, why don't you get a real job? Why don't you just grow up? Why don't you yada yada this, that, and the other thing? You know, Billy does this, Billy works at this job, why can't you be more responsible like Billy?
Because I'm an artist, man.
Right, and it's just that, and I feel like terrible saying that, because it is such a cliche, you know, like it's that whole I'm an artist and I shouldn't have to work for a living thing. I would love to find a job that utilizes my skill set, that is that means something to me. I just don't like working for other people, especially when it comes to things that I'm not interested in. I've done it. I've had dozens of jobs. I've worked every job, from being an ice cream scooping food service guy, to being a pizza flipping, dough flipping food service guy, to being a door-to-door salesman, to being a telemarketer, to working in a supply warehouse. I mean, I've done it all. And I can't seem to keep a job for more than a year without me getting bored and just kind of walking off or not showing up. And it's not so much because I can't do it or I don't want to do it. Well, no, it is because I don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it.
Yeah,
so I don't.
Tell me.
And I think that a lot of the time it comes down to a decision for people. Do they want to choose between having a lot of money, or at least a decent amount of money, and no free time in which to spend said money? Or do you want to have free time and have not much money? And for me, my time is valuable, and I would rather fill it with things that are meaningful to me, even if I have to scrape by to survive, which I've had to do for years. And it's not easy. I lived on my own recently in a house that I couldn't afford, and I had some people that kind of fucked me out of some rent that they agreed to pay. Utilities that didn't get paid on time, and so a whole lot of debt racked up in my name, and it just accumulated.
It's shitty. It's a shitty life.
Everyone knows that story, so.
Here, can I interrupt you for a second? I have a Thoreau quote. The laboring man has not leisure for a true integrity day by day. He cannot afford to sustain the manliest relations to men. He has no time to be anything but a machine. How can he remember well his ignorance, which his growth requires, who has so often to use his knowledge?
Sounds like what he was saying, what you're saying. What I think that what I'm hearing is that we are expected to be productivity machines.
Constantly working 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week at least, just to survive, which gives us no time to create, it gives us no leisure. If you have 2 hours a day to create art, but the rest of your day is exhausting you from trying to make ends meet, then you're not going to be very productive in your artistic mind.
No. Not at all. And I mean, that's why, so our society doesn't seem to be structured to support people who think and feel that way. And that's, I'd say, among some of the content-wise, what I've done, what I've tried to explore has been that, which is, for me, that's almost schizophrenic battle between how do I do what I care about and make money, or can I even do it? How do I support myself? while at the same time people are expected even to hang and to not fall out, you have to spend more and more and more. What do young people like to do? They like to go out, they shop, they go out to eat, they go to movies, they go to bars, they spend massive amounts of money on booze that I don't have to spend. I can't really do a lot of social things because not only am I spending a lot of my time working on stuff, but that I'm not getting paid for it, but that I don't have the money to even go do things for people, and at least around these neck of the woods, there's not really much you can do that people enjoy that doesn't involve some amount of money, which I just don't have. So by necessity, one of the things that I really started to explore in writing was that there's kind of this, for me, this struggle between how do I support myself and how do I make ends meet and how do I continue to do things that I care about. And one of the big themes in the first LP that I released is Breath in the Fire, which would be figurative and literal opiates, is the tendency for our culture to drug ourselves, not just with drugs, like, i.e. Literal opiates, but things like, the newest, biggest television, the best fucking Android cell phone with,
every game of football in the entire season.
Yeah, and even well, who wants the best cell phone that's going to be spying on you? I mean, I don't even use cell phones. I don't like it. I don't like the idea that there's global positioning and GPS that can track you down to the fucking hair on your arm via satellite. I mean, that's really uncomfortable for me. I value my privacy to such an extent that these days there's not even really much personal information that's legit, that's not disinformation that I will even publicly put out there on the internet or otherwise. You could call that paranoid, but I think it's realistic. I mean, what we found now through mainstream journalism is that the microphones and the cellular phones can be activated remotely without our consent, whether the phone's on or not, to listen to our conversations. There are satellites that can zoom into us through space down to the hairs on our arms. It's very Orwellian kind of thing. And so, on the other hand, we have people who are in charge who want us to be very complacent, and they keep telling us spend more, buy more. That's the way that you're going to stay happy. And that's
cogs.
Well, yeah, you start to feel like you're a cog in a machine. And I hate, that sounds like a stereotype. I hate to use the word machine because, it just makes you sound like a 13-year-old.
Yeah, it sounds
fuck machine, man.
Right. It sounds cliche, but it's really the best way to describe it, and the most accessible way to describe it, and it still stands true. I mean, after 100 years of people saying it, or more,
Well, ironically for me too, the genre of music that a lot of people, and I prefer, actually a friend of mine pointed this out to me at one point. I think I've never heard a more accurate description of the type of music that I make, but he called it electronic fusion, in that there are elements of industrial, there are elements of hip and trip and glitch hop, there's elements of jazz, of psychedelic, of all sorts of music that I've listened to, IDM music, dubstep, all sorts of music that I've listened to and accumulated throughout the years of me studying music. And there's really no one genre that I zoom in on. I try to be, thematically it's cohesive. I have a message that I think is pretty central to it, but musically I like to explore it. And a lot of people, they don't see the consistency across the board there, and it seems kind of schizophrenic. To be fair, it is. But a lot of people just prefer to refer to it as industrial. I think it's more pseudo-industrial because it's gently self-satirizing, and it kind of, especially the first LP, really lampoons that culture. I can say that I do that as feeling myself to be a part of it, but there are generally what I consider to be stereotypical, or as you said, cliche things to it that I like to have fun with, making fun of the stereotypes. But industrial, what I was going for with this is that what you're saying, the cogs and machine thing, you can really trace that back to what is called the Industrial Revolution, where and again, to go off track a little bit, I am a firm believer that the average human being, if we lived, if we lived off bare essentials, we grew our own produce, we grew our own food, and we were somewhat concerned about just basic necessities, we could live off of 3-4 hour work days. And I think that if there were a division of labor in such a way where people were really only concerned with feeding themselves and the people they cared about and just the basic essentials that we need, we would not have to be overworked with no health care, with these insane hours that are killing us, and having to drug ourselves with coffee and cigarettes and alcohol. and any number of other things that, television. That's the whole concept of the first LP, that we have all of these things that we're escaping from something that we really don't belong in that situation to begin with. Human beings are not meant to function on clock. We're not meant to have this rigid imposition of structure on our lives. I think that clocks were an invention that were designed to make us conform to this imaginary...
The calendar system as well.
Yeah, the calendar system is not even... Yeah, it's not even aligned with the natural human cycle. Yeah, it's really kind of like a black magical device, I think.
This is why so many people are interested in the Mayan ways and other ancient calendars that didn't follow such an erratic path. So out of tune with the cycles of things around us. Our month is not actually a month, which originally it was.
Lunar, it was all lunar based.
Yeah.
The thing that I keep coming back to, and this is very important, Bill Burroughs, obviously, for people who have read Naked Lunch is where I get the name Bradley the Buyer, and there's a story to that, and maybe I'll talk about it later, maybe I won't. Google it. The Burroughs thing that I'm getting at, he basically said one of the best things to do in terms of conquering a foreign culture and subjugating it to your will as a conqueror is to change their calendar and change all of their holidays and change the dates behind them and revise them in such a way that you take their pre-existing things, like for the Romans, Saturnalia became Christmas, or the celebration of winter solstice became Christmas. For some of the pagans, it was the celebration of Ishtar, or Astarte, the goddess of, similar to Aphrodite, as I understand it, kind of physical beauty and love. And they took that and they made it somehow into some guy being nailed to a cross and resurrected, which eventually then became a giant bunny that craps out chocolate eggs.
What I did want to say was that it is important to remember that humans aren't meant to function on someone else's clock. And even among different humans, there's different cycles of biorhythms that are, our own personal cycles. Just like, there's not one woman, who exactly match up another woman in terms of menstrual cycle unless they live together for a while and their bodies' natural rhythms and train with each other. That's different. What I mean is that, even women independently of each other have different kind of menstrual cycles, just like different humans have different body cycles, and that there's one universal clock, or time standard at least, divided into what you Pacifics and the Eastern and whatever. But basically we're all working on the same clock and we're in the same time zone. It's designed to make us conform to a certain schedule, not that's most productive or the best for us, but for people who are in charge of us. So then beyond this, the project, what would you like to know?
Well, let's see. We went into how you got into music.
How I spilt beer.
How you spill beer. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
I'm a sloppy drunk.
I don't know. How did you get into the occult? What opened your mind to alternate states of reality? The idea that some people maybe set aside doing things under the radar, these kinds of ideas, secret groups.
That's. I'll try to be as direct as I can. That's.
You don't have.
No. I would love to talk about. I'm just trying to trace it back to a single point of origination. Look, I've always felt that we're not being told exactly what's going on and that we're being lied to. But beyond that, I remember just when I started to become a young teenager, I'd say the age of 14 or 15, discovering certain things. My first real exposure to what you would call a modern kind of grimoire would have been one of the real kind of like cheesy mass publicated, publication kind of forms of the Necronomicon, which is obviously based on H.P. Lovecraft, and then later on the Army of Darkness and Evil Dead movies. But
yes.
A lot of people really do think that those things are real, and they're not, but that doesn't mean that they don't work. And what that suggests to me is, as long as you have some sort of intention, you have a focal point or a symbol that acts as a medium or an interface between your own internal subjective world and what is often mistakenly referred to as the external or the objective world. The as long as you have that symbol that serves as a medium between your own internal and the external, you can unify those two so that there is no difference between them. And I think that what that kind of occultism tricks your brain into realizing eventually, if you study it long enough, that what people think to be the difference between the internal and the external is really not that different. It's arbitrary. It's a Western kind of like schism between our internal subjective experience and the external world in a more holistic model, and what advanced yoga and things like that is designed to train your mind to realize that you are unified and at one with your environment all the time. And of course, I think that if you are better able to, if you're more aware, or you're at a higher level of awareness than the people around you, you're going to be better able to affect change in your environment.
I agree.
And that's really what it boils down to. The rest is just trappings. I don't think you have to stand inside of a circle and chant names in Hebrew. I don't think that you have to, fast or pray for days and days to accomplish some lofty goal. I think that really what it comes down to, for me, is understanding yourself and your place in the world as an individual and how you relate back to that world. And theoretically, I think that if you do that, whatever that true purpose that you have in life is, that you will be met with less resistance by the universe than if you were not doing that. And that's not to say that people won't disagree with you or challenge you or not understand you, because sometimes they will more so. But for you personally, your life will be a lot more enriching, and you'll gain a lot more from that than if you were just drifting along and not really giving a fuck. But I mean, I don't know if that really answers your question. I'm trying to trace it back to my first inclination that thing existed, that sort of thing existed. And I would say that, like I said, I mean, the early days with the Necronomicon, messing around with that, which I had some really weird experiences with that.
Could you tell us which version of Necronomicon? I know there's multiple versions.
Yeah, it's been so long.
I don't mean the collection of works by H.P. Lovecraft.
No, it definitely it was a grimoire, and I mean it's been so long that I can't really even remember. What I do remember, there's one particular situation in which myself and some friends, and obviously I'm not going to mention any names, but we broke into this old abandoned hotel that supposedly was haunted. Apparently someone who had been working there years back had took a shotgun blast to the face there. I didn't know any of this going in there, but we went in there and there was black mold growing all over the walls. The place was destroyed by water. It was just abandoned spontaneously. Like, everyone just up and left. They just left the place there. There was not that much damage to it done at the time, and it really very easily could have renovated it. But for whatever reason they didn't, and they just left it there. Which leads me to believe that people were just really creeped out by it. There were some bad vibes there. Like I said, the place that in a botched robbery, someone died. And
so much so that nobody wanted to go back in.
Right, that's kind of the
aura
impression.
was so dark.
Right, and there were a lot of like TVs, there were computers, things that we could have stolen if we were smart and sold for money, but we didn't. What we did was we went around the whole...
What are you selling with it?
Right.
What comes with it?
Yeah, right. And that, the other thing is that what we ended up doing was we just went around the whole hotel, and this was my I want to be a rock star phase. So we took all these TVs and we threw them through the fucking windows into the pool below, shattered the windows and just threw these TVs and computer monitors. We went through and we smashed every light bulb in the hotel with a plunger. Just total destruction, like wanton teenage destruction with no purpose or no reason behind it. And at a certain point, we found this old liquor in the cabinets at the hotel, and there were no caps on it. So there was all kinds of dust and little dead bugs floating around and God knows what else. Being dumb teenagers, we just took coffee filters and we poured this old liquor through the coffee filters into these water bottles and we drank it and we got all fucked up and we had a big orgy in room 420. And there was broken glass all over the room because we had shattered the balcony windows, thrown TVs through them. And I mean, this was for like a 15 or 16-year-old. I mean, for most kids having that kind of experience is pretty unusual at that age.
Busted.
Right, exactly. Oh, shit. No, yeah. There could have been so many more opportunities you would have had to arrest me by now. So, anyway, but the point that I'm getting with that is that place was definitely haunted, and I don't say that in the sense of ghosts. I mean, I think that energy can definitely get embedded into things. And so, one of the things that I noticed was that there was this weird sigil, kind of a symbol painted in black paint on the boiler room door, and it turns out that it was a seal from the Necronomicon. or one of the grimoires posing as the Necronomicon. As you said, there's several versions of it. And basically, it was kind of like a do not enter, don't fuck with this. So of course we walk in. And I swear when we got into that room, it was like this powerhouse of just this something awful. Just something awful. And like, I mean, keep in mind, I didn't know anything about any of the events that occurred there before. But, you know, after we destroyed the whole hotel, and by the way, there were people living there, squatters. We found a bunch of old notes. And these people, the notes that we had read from them were like saying things along the same line, like this darkness has come into my life. I don't know where it's coming from. It's definitely very palpable, and like I feel like my life is going into a downward spiral, basically. Yada yada. And those rooms in which the squatters had been living, they smelled like, you know, types of drugs associated with inhalants, like cleaning products, paint thinner, things like that. I mean, these rooms would just reek. Either like someone was cooking meth there, or like somebody was huffing something. And these certain rooms would have this really nasty vibe to them, plus very strange chemical smells. So anyway, we fucked the whole hotel up. I mean, we just destroyed it, demolished it. And then eventually they tore it down. But the important thing to remember was, for a while I felt like there was this something that attached itself to me that was not particularly good. And so then from there I really had to kind of learn to do cleaning out, you know, the closet, so to speak. I had to kind of focus on taking some of that and trying to cleanse it. And so then from there I got more into, you'd say, the lighter aspect of that.
Okay, could you go into a little more detail on how you cleansed this thing from you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I went from looking into the real kind of basic stuff that a lot of high school kids play with, things like the Necronomicon, and unfortunately, like, bullshit texts like the Satanic Bible and all that. I started really actually looking into real Hermetic literature, Hermetic being derived from Hermes, the thrice great, which would have been
the staff of Caduceus.
Yeah, right. The Greek equivalent to the Egyptian god Thoth. Oh. And Thoth again was credited with inventing the human language, medicine, science, alchemy, and that was related very closely to chemistry and medicine. A lot of people don't realize that chemistry and medicine and writing and literature and all these things all come from the same kind of source, and they were all very heretical. They were all opposed to religion and opposed to the status quo, and you know, people who practice these things would have gotten burnt at the stake.
It's like when you take the one look at the Garden of Eden story, basically, that you know, all these things are knowledge-based, basically, like furthering us, creating society and furthering our minds. It's all very evil if you look at it from one direction. Although there's many ways you can look at the Garden of Eden story in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, the Gnostic interpretation of that, Gnostic being derived from the Greek word to know, or gnosis. I'm sure most of the people watching this already know that, but I'm just explaining for those who don't. Gnosticism is the concept that you do not have to have faith of God or of the overmind or the supreme intelligence, the divine intelligence. You can have direct experiential knowledge of it, which is the difference between faith and blind religion and dogma and the Gnostic path. The Gnostics revered the serpent as being the source of knowledge and of intelligence and that which taught man to know himself. But, I mean, this aside, what I started looking into was more of the Hermetic literature, the source text of the Golden Dawn, as revealed by Israel Regardie, which is again kind of the quasi-Masonic order that started in 1888 in Britain, London. Then the Rosicrucian stuff, alchemical allegory there, and then the Crowleyan corpus and Austin Osman Spare, Robert Anson Wilson. If you don't know any of these people, I don't want to really go too much into detail.
It's fun watching your mind bounce, because it's like you have information planted around your cranium, and you look different directions to access it like a computer.
Yeah, it's funny.
And you're like, this connects with this and this and this and this. It's just really interesting to watch.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I'm full of what a lot of people would consider to be useless information.
Well, they don't know what useful information is.
So, really, all that aside, I'd say the main thing that I took away from being exposed to that was that we are born into the world with certain expectations that are placed on us. by our parents, our friends, our teachers, religious figures, police officers, people in positions of authority, and in general any asshole that you meet on the street. And they have this idea of who we are supposed to be, which is not necessarily aligned with who we really are. And the ultimate heresy and the ultimate taboo is knowing yourself and having some idea of who you really are and what you really want. And people who are very aware tend sometimes to have trouble dealing with the fact that other people around them want to keep them in a state of darkness or ignorance. And so I've always been very much about trying to take this and show other people or expose them. And again, that ties into the creative drive behind music or any other art that I do. The occult thing particularly, I don't view it that as being the end itself for me. Art is the end, and I use that as a form of inspiration. But I mean, it's not like I exclusively focus on that. I know a lot of people who really make that their life work to just be very adept in occult stuff, and for me, it's more of a fuel.
Right, yeah, I mean, the art is the end. I mean, it is the means to the end.
Yeah, I mean, I say the occult is the inspiration and the means. At times, also, I mean, current events, reading the news, watching how people behave. I get a lot of inspirations from conversations I have with people that I either admire or I think very little of. And I absorb things from the world, and I try to recognate and process those things in a different way. And so the music and the art and the writing that I do comes out in like a kind of collage or a hodgepodge of I pick from here and I pick from there and over here, and I kind of throw them all together in a melting pot, and then whatever comes out, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah. I think everyone's art is the history of themselves, basically.
For me, I would like to think that it's not just myself. I mean, it's myself in the sense that everything that I interact with is filtered through my own brain. Sure, but it's only the things that you've absorbed, right.
You know?
Right. And I will say that most of what I write is not really exclusively related to me and my personal life. It's more my observations of the world. But again, I mean, that all relates to me in the sense that it's coming from me, and it's my spin, or it's my... And I'm not going to even pretend that I'm unbiased or that I'm objective. I don't think objective art or objective journalism or writing or anything like that exists.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
There's no such thing as objective journalism, for example. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own bias. Everyone's got their own spin. Again, getting on that kind of sidetrack, that topic, Hunter Thompson, gonzo journalism, the idea that everything is so fucking relative that to even make any pretense towards being objective or being rational or being completely logical or just the facts, that in and of itself should make you not trust someone. If they're telling you they're just giving you the facts or they're fair and balanced, you know, like a certain news corporation tends to say, we are fair and balanced.
Oh, which one is it?
Oh,
one of them, I can't remember.
Yeah. You know, don't trust them. They're not. And that, again, I mean, so I would say that, and to sum things up, I don't want to get too lengthy, but Bradley the Buyer, what it is, it's a culture jamming project, and this encompasses writing, it encompasses music, visual art, meta theater or video, staged, performances. It's just, there's no limit to what shape it can take, and the overall goal and scope of it is to take traditional thought patterns that we inherit from our culture and disrupt them violently and sabotage that, because I think that people take those things for granted and they get stuck in stagnant routines and they can't think outside of them. So my goal then is to try to throw a wrench into that and disrupt it in whatever way I can. So without giving too much away about what I'm planning on doing with this and where it's all going, that's kind of, I think, the best, most accurate way that I can sum it up.
You mentioned culture jamming. Now, many of the people who see this will know what that is, but...
Google it.
Fair enough.
No. Culture jamming...
I was going to say, your opinion.
Yeah, culture jamming really is just this. What I just basically said, it's designed to disrupt traditional thought patterns in your average primate. People have a set way of looking at the world, and it's not necessarily because it's the way it is, or it's what they even really think personally. It's because it's what they're told. And it's what mainstream media outlets tell them. It's what billboards tell them. And this doesn't happen on a conscious level. It happens on a subconscious level. And these thoughts are planted in the back of our heads by advertising, by gurus, by marketing campaigns, by religions, by official news channels.
Big record company, pop music.
Anything. I mean, it's a certain agenda that is pushed on us without us not, we don't even always realize it's being pushed on us. So my goal then is to take that and break it and skullfuck it and turn it on its head and make something completely, something different out of it. So that does not mean that I'm rejecting culture, because I think, and again, this is a point that I stress over and over again, that counterculture itself is a form of culture. It's just this offshoot of it. And it's kind of like if you, and I hate to use this another cliche, the Matrix analogy, if you view like the idea of Zion outside of the Matrix, you come to realize Zion is just another part of the Matrix. It's like Matrix within Matrix. And Zion is the part of the Matrix designed for people who can initially see through it. And it's designed to trap them, to keep them from getting any further than that. And so they're given this idea that they are superior, or that they're different, or they're alternative, or that they're beyond.
That's us. That's you and me. These,
Right.
we think
Nobody's immune. I mean,
we think we're higher.
Yeah, right.
We're some kind of illuminated ones or something.
Yeah, no, and that's the illusory illumination. Enlightenment is another trap. And again, it's reiterated over and over again. If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him.
Back with double pain and lack. Go back.